When I asked my daughter about her wedding, for which I had paid $40,000, she replied, "It was 4 days ago, just for the family." I, the one who gave everything I had, turned out to be unnecessary. A month later, she called me and asked, "The mortgage is overdue. When will you pay it?" My answer turned her world upside down. She begged me for forgiveness. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The car door slammed like a gunshot outside my house. 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, and Beverly's heels clicked against my porch steps with the rhythm of an angry woodpecker. I opened the front door to find my daughter's face, streaked red from crying, mascara smeared down her cheeks like war paint, clutching wedding magazines against her chest. "Daddy, I need you to save my wedding." No hello, no explanation for showing up unannounced, just desperation wrapped in designer clothing, standing in my doorway while the Texas heat pressed against my back. "Bevy, what's wrong? Slow down and—" "The venue!" She pushed past me into the living room, her voice cracking. "They want $40,000 by Friday or we lose everything. Everything, Daddy." My worn leather armchair creaked as I lowered myself into it, bills scattered across the coffee table forgotten. The single lamp cast long shadows across the room while the air conditioner hummed its steady rhythm. Beverly paced between my couch and the window, her breathing rapid and shallow. 40,000? The number hit me like ice water. "Beverly, that's everything I have saved." "I know." She dropped into the chair across from me, wedding magazines spilling across the floor. "I never wanted to ask you for something this big, but Daddy, this is my one day. The one day that will matter for the rest of my life." Her voice broke on the last word, and suddenly she wasn't 35 anymore. She was 8 years old again, standing in this same living room after skinning her knee, looking at me like I could fix anything in the world. My hands trembled as she handed me a glossy brochure featuring crystal chandeliers and marble columns. "The Grandview Estate," she whispered. "It's perfect, Daddy. Doug and I went there last month, and I could picture walking down that aisle in Mama's dress, seeing you smile in the front row." Sarah's voice echoed in my memory. "Never let our baby girl down, Jessie, whatever she needs. But, sweetheart, your savings, gone." Beverly's tears came harder now, the kind that made her shoulders shake. "The marketing contracts dried up, and Doug's been between jobs for 3 months. We've been living on credit cards, hoping something would break our way." The brochure felt heavy in my arthritic fingers. $40,000. My emergency fund, built penny by penny over 15 years of careful living. Money I'd planned to leave her anyway, just not like this. "You said you'd always be there for me," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "When Mama died, you promised nothing would change between us." Daddy. She only called me Daddy when she needed something important, and we both knew it. The childhood nickname fell from her lips like a practiced prayer, designed to crack open whatever resistance I might have left. I looked at the venue photos again. Soaring ceilings, gardens that belonged in fairy tales, the kind of place where dreams came true. Then I looked at my daughter's desperate face, at the designer purse that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, at the hope flickering behind her tears. The air conditioner clicked off, leaving us in sudden silence. "When is the wedding?" I asked. "June 28th. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. 6 weeks. Just enough time to make it perfect, if we can secure the venue. 6 weeks. I calculated quickly. Social Security? Pension? The small interest from Sarah's life insurance? I could make it work. Somehow, I always made it work. My shoulders slumped as the weight of decisions settled over me. "Okay." "Okay?" Beverly's head snapped up. "I'll get the money." She launched herself from the chair, nearly knocking over my coffee table in her rush to reach me. Her arms wrapped around my neck, and for a moment, she smelled like the little girl who used to fall asleep on my lap during Sunday movies. "I love you so much, Daddy. You're saving my entire life." As quickly as they'd started, her tears stopped. She kissed my forehead, gathered her magazines, and headed for the door with renewed energy. "I'll come by tomorrow morning for the money," she called over her shoulder. "Early, around 9:30. I need to get to the venue by 11 to finalize everything." The door closed behind her, leaving me staring at the scattered brochures on my coffee table. Outside, her Honda started up and pulled away, taking with it the last of my savings and somehow the last of my peace. Morning light streamed through the living room windows, illuminating the wedding brochures still scattered where Beverly had left them 13 hours ago. I hadn't moved them, hadn't slept much either, spending most of the night at my kitchen table with bank statements, calculator, and 3 cups of coffee that had grown cold while I ran the numbers again and again. Her car pulled into the driveway at 9 sharp, 30 minutes early. Through the window, I watched Beverly check her reflection in the rearview mirror, then stride up the walkway with the confidence of someone who knew she'd already won. "Morning, Daddy," she breezed through the front door I'd left unlocked, finding me still in my pajamas and terrycloth robe. "Ready for the big day?" The big day, as if withdrawing my life savings was cause for celebration. "Let me get dressed first," I mumbled, but she was already settling into the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with the practiced ease of someone half her age. "Take your time, I'll just wait here." The bedroom safe sat behind my dresser, hidden beneath Sarah's old jewelry box. My arthritic fingers fumbled with the combination, her birthday, same as always, while Beverly's voice drifted from the kitchen, cheerful and impatient. "Daddy, everything okay in there?" "Fine, sweetheart, just counting." $400 bills. I'd withdrawn them yesterday afternoon from 3 different banks, not wanting to explain to anyone teller why Jesse Collins suddenly needed his entire emergency fund in cash. The bills felt crisp and foreign in my weathered hands, more money than I'd ever held at once. Back in the kitchen, Beverly watched me count with barely concealed excitement. Her foot tapped against the linoleum floor in rhythm with her texting thumbs. Someone was messaging her constantly, Doug probably wondering about the timeline. "When exactly is the ceremony?" I asked, laying the bills in neat stacks on my kitchen table. "What church are you using?" "Oh, Daddy, so many details still to figure out." She waved her hand dismissively, but her eyes never left the money. "The venue handles most of the coordination. That's what makes them worth every penny." "And the guest list? How many people are we talking about?" "Medium-sized, nothing too fancy." Another text message made her phone buzz. She glanced at it quickly, typed a response, then looked back at me with practiced patience. "You worry too much about details. That's what wedding planners are for." I finished counting. $40,000 exact. Beverly's fingers twitched toward the envelope I'd prepared, but she forced herself to wait while I double-checked the amount. "There." I slid the envelope across the table. "Every cent." She snatched it with both hands, clutching it like she was afraid I'd change my mind. "You're the best father in the world. I mean that." The hug she gave me felt rushed, distracted. Over her shoulder, I caught a glimpse through the kitchen window of her car's back seat, packed with overnight bags and suitcases. Strange, she hadn't mentioned traveling anywhere. "Are you going somewhere after the venue meeting?" I asked. Beverly pulled away quickly. "What?" "Oh, those. Doug and I are thinking about a weekend trip before the wedding gets crazy. You know, last chance to relax." She kissed my cheek, envelope secure in her purse, and headed for the door with the same urgency that had brought her here last night. No lingering conversation, no coffee together, no time to discuss the father-daughter moments I'd been imagining since agreeing to help. "I'll call you later with updates," she called from the driveway, and then she was gone, driving away fast enough to kick up gravel from my unpaved driveway. I stood on the porch watching her taillights disappear, feeling both proud and strangely hollow, like I'd just given away something more valuable than money. The morning air was already thick with humidity, promising another scorcher. I went back inside and sat in my leather chair, picking up one of the wedding brochures she'd left behind. For the first time, I really studied the pictures: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, gardens that looked like something from a movie. $40,000. Worth it, I told myself. Whatever made Beverly happy was worth it. By 2:30 that afternoon, the house felt too quiet. I needed air, space to process what had just happened. The wedding brochure came with me to the back deck, along with an old photo album I'd retrieved from the hall closet, one I hadn't opened since Sarah's funeral 3 years ago. The wooden deck chair creaked under my weight, weathered and sun-bleached from years of Texas summers. Above me, the oak tree Sarah had planted when Beverly was born provided blessed shade, its leaves rustling in the slight breeze that offered the only relief from the heat. Cicadas buzzed their endless song while I opened the album to pages I knew by heart. There she was, 8-year-old Beverly in the backyard, wrapped in one of Sarah's white bedsheets, dragging behind her like a wedding train. In the photo, she'd made me play the groom for her favorite doll, both of us kneeling in the grass while she performed an elaborate ceremony she'd invented. "When I grow up, you'll walk me down the aisle, Daddy," she'd announced that day, "and I'll have the most beautiful dress and the biggest cake." Sarah had been watching from the kitchen window, laughing at our daughter's theatrical performance. Later, she'd whispered to me over dinner, "Mark my words, Jesse, that girl will have the wedding of the century someday." I turned the pages slowly, each photograph a window into Beverly's evolution. Age 10, watching Princess Diana's wedding on our old television, sketching dress designs on notebook paper. Age 16, cutting pictures from bridal magazines and pasting them in a scrapbook she kept hidden under her bed. Age 22, bringing home different boyfriends to family dinners, while I wondered which one would be the one to deserve her. The rope swing I'd built when she was 7 still hung from the oak's lowest branch, though the rope had frayed and the wooden seat had weathered gray. Beverly used to pump her legs for hours, trying to swing high enough to touch the clouds. "Higher, Daddy! Push me higher!" Those were the days when dreams seemed as simple as reaching the sky. My iced tea had grown warm in the heat. Ice cubes melted to slivers. 3 hours had passed since Beverly drove away with my life savings, yet I felt nothing but deep satisfaction. What else was I saving money for, really? A bigger house I didn't need? Fancy dinners I'd eat alone? Travel to places that would feel empty without Sarah? The wedding venue brochure lay open on my lap, its glossy pages showing elegant ballrooms and manicured gardens. I could picture Beverly there in white silk, walking down an aisle lined with flowers, while I escorted her toward happiness. The image filled me with warmth, despite the nagging memory of her rushed departure, her evasive answers about ceremony details. Wedding stress, I told myself. Brides got overwhelmed planning their perfect day. That's what made fathers necessary, to provide stability, support, and whatever financial help they could manage. A lawnmower started up somewhere down the street, its steady drone mixing with the cicadas and the distant hum of air conditioners, working overtime against the heat. The neighborhood had changed since Beverly's childhood. The house where she used to play with the Morrison kids now belonged to a young couple with no children. The corner store where I'd bought her ice cream had become a cell phone repair shop. But some things remained constant: father's love, family loyalty, the promise to be there when it mattered most. I closed the photo album as shadows began lengthening across the yard, signaling the approach of evening. Tomorrow, I'd call Beverly to ask about dress shopping, maybe offer to help with other wedding preparations. For now, though, I wanted to savor this feeling of having done right by my daughter, of honoring the promise I'd made to Sarah all those years ago. The feeling of deep contentment settled over me like the oak tree's shade, protective, comforting, complete. I headed inside to start dinner, already planning our next conversation, unaware that Beverly would avoid my calls for the next 8 weeks, and that my contentment was about to shatter into pieces I'd never be able to reassemble. 3 days passed before I reached for the phone. Wednesday morning, May 19th, with coffee cooling in my favorite mug and wedding magazines still scattered across my kitchen table where Beverly had left them. The landline felt heavier than usual in my arthritic hand. "Beverly, it's your dad. I was thinking about dress shopping." "Oh, Daddy." Her voice sounded breathless, distracted. "So much stress with the caterer right now? They're trying to change our menu at the last minute. Can I call you back?" She never called back. By the first week of June, my notebook had 5 unanswered calls, recorded in careful handwriting. Each attempt followed the same pattern. I'd dial her number after lunch, listen to 3 rings, then hear Beverly's cheerful voice explaining why she couldn't talk. Venue problems, Doug's work schedule, family drama on his side. "Honey, do you need help with anything else?" I asked during call number 6. "Music? Flowers? I could drive up and—" "Everything's handled, Daddy. You've done enough." The line went dead before I could respond. June 20th marked 8 weeks of this dance. The wedding was supposedly 8 days away, yet I still knew nothing concrete. No church name, no ceremony time, no guest list numbers. When I pressed Beverly for details, her voice would get small and evasive. When exactly is the ceremony? I need to get my suit cleaned. We're still finalizing the date. Doug's work schedule is so unpredictable right now, and his mother has been... The line crackled. Sorry, Daddy. Bad connection. I'll call you tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. Heat shimmers danced across my backyard as July settled over Texas like a suffocating blanket. The rope swing Sarah had built for Beverly hung motionless in the still air, its frayed edges a reminder of promises kept and trust freely given. Inside, my phone remained stubbornly silent. Harry Jenkins found me on my back porch that Tuesday evening, staring at nothing while ice melted in my sweet tea glass. Wedding stress getting to you, Jesse? I'd told him about Beverly's big day back in May. Proud as any father, now the words felt foreign in my mouth. She's been too busy to talk. Haven't heard from her in 2 weeks. Harry's weathered face creased with concern. That normal for brides these days? I wouldn't know. My voice sounded hollow even to myself. Never had a daughter get married before. Maybe you should drive up there. Check on her. The suggestion hung between us like heat lightning on the horizon, dangerous and inevitable. I'd been thinking the same thing for days, but hadn't wanted to admit it. What kind of father shows up unannounced because his grown daughter won't return his calls? The kind whose life savings disappeared into a black hole of wedding preparations he'd never seen? July 15th arrived with temperatures pushing toward triple digits. I made my final attempt at contact that morning, sitting in my kitchen with the phone pressed against my ear, listening to it ring once, twice, 3 times before Beverly's recorded voice cheerfully invited me to leave a message. "This is ridiculous," I said to the machine. "Call me back, or I'm coming over." Silence stretched through the afternoon like taffy, broken only by the air conditioner's mechanical wheeze and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. By evening, I'd checked the phone 3 times to make sure it was working properly. The dial tone mocked me with its steady persistence. Something cold had settled in my stomach over the past week. Not worry anymore, but a growing certainty that my daughter was deliberately avoiding me. The same girl who used to call every Tuesday just to share workplace gossip was now treating me like a persistent bill collector. Standing at my kitchen window, I watched the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of anger and betrayal. My truck keys hung by the door, silver against the wood grain, waiting for a decision I'd been avoiding for 8 weeks. The highway to Dallas stretched east from Willow Creek, carrying families toward reunions and fathers toward answers they might not want to find. 4 days of wrestling with indecision ended Saturday morning when I pulled my truck keys from the hook by the door. July 19th, 9 o'clock sharp, with the sun already promising another scorcher and my resolve finally crystallizing into action. I showered carefully, chose clean jeans and my best button-down shirt, the blue one Sarah always said brought out my eyes. Beverly's address was written in my careful script on a scrap of paper tucked inside my address book. Numbers I'd memorized but never used for surprise visits. The Exxon station on Main Street sold me gas and coffee that tasted like burnt wire, but I needed the caffeine more than flavor. My hands shook slightly as I counted out exact change, telling myself it was age, not nerves. Highway 20 East cut through familiar oil country, past pump jacks that nodded like mechanical prayers and billboards advertising wedding venues I'd never heard of. The radio played George Strait, singing about family bonds that couldn't be broken, which felt like cosmic mockery given my current situation. 20 miles out, doubt crept in like morning fog. What would I say when Beverly opened her door? "Surprise, honey. Your old dad got worried when you stopped returning his calls." She was 35 years old, entitled to privacy, entitled to wedding stress that didn't include detailed reports to her father. But $40,000 bought me the right to ask questions. Mile markers ticked past while I rehearsed conversations in my head. Beverly explaining her silence with reasonable excuses. Me apologizing for being an overprotective father. Both of us laughing about misunderstandings while she showed me wedding photos and let me help with last-minute preparations. The optimistic scenario felt increasingly unlikely as Dallas suburbs materialized through heat shimmer, sprawling subdivisions that looked identical from the highway. Beverly lived in one of these beige complexes where young professionals paid too much rent for too little space. Construction near the city limits forced traffic into single file, giving me time to notice details I'd missed during my mental rehearsals. A radio advertisement for marriage counseling services, a billboard promoting intimate wedding packages, starting at $5,000. Numbers that made my $40,000 sacrifice seem excessive for what Beverly claimed she wanted. The GPS voice in my truck, a recent purchase for exactly this kind of navigation, guided me through subdivisions where every street looked the same. Turn right at Maple Ridge Drive, left on Oakwood Circle, straight past identical mailbox clusters until I reached Beverly's building. Her parking space held her blue Honda, which meant she was home. Probably screening my calls from 20 feet away, deciding her father wasn't worth interrupting whatever important Saturday morning activities occupied her time. I turned off the engine and sat for a moment in sudden silence, my heart hammering against my ribs like it had 47 years ago when I raced Sarah to the hospital for Beverly's birth. Same highway, same desperate need for answers, but this time I wasn't rushing toward joy. The dashboard clock read 10:15. I'd made good time despite construction delays and nervous stops for gas. Through my windshield, Beverly's apartment building looked generic and unwelcoming, all beige siding and black shutters that probably cost extra but added no character. My reflection in the rearview mirror showed a tired old man with worry lines deeper than they'd been 2 months ago. I straightened my shirt, checked that my wallet was secure, and opened the door into heat that hit like opening an oven. 20 steps to the building entrance, 2 flights of stairs to Beverly's apartment, 1 knock on a door that might finally provide answers to questions I'd been asking since May. Apartment 2B sat at the end of a narrow hallway that smelled like carpet cleaner and other people's cooking. I knocked firmly, twice, then waited while air conditioning units hummed behind thin walls and somewhere a television played morning talk shows. Footsteps approached the door, paused. The peephole darkened as Beverly checked who was visiting unannounced on a Saturday morning. A long moment passed before I heard the deadbolt turn. "Daddy, what are you doing here?" She opened the door just wide enough to show her face, still in pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt at 10:15 in the morning. Her hair was uncombed, her expression caught between surprise and something that looked suspiciously like panic. "You haven't been answering my calls. I was worried. I've been so busy with—" She gestured vaguely behind her, then seemed to remember her manners. "Come in, I guess. But I can't visit long. Doug and I have plans this afternoon." The apartment was smaller than I'd imagined, open plan with white walls and furniture that looked expensive but uncomfortable. Wedding cards scattered across the kitchen counter caught my attention immediately, dozens of them, some still sealed, creating a paper landscape of congratulations I hadn't been invited to share. "Nice place," I said, though it felt cold despite the air conditioning working overtime against July heat. "Very modern." Beverly moved nervously between the living room and kitchen, straightening things that didn't need straightening. On the coffee table, several picture frames lay face down, like she'd been trying to hide something before I arrived. "Honey, I need to know about the wedding." I kept my voice gentle, paternal. "When exactly is the ceremony?" She froze with her back to me, hands gripping the kitchen counter. "Why do you need to know?" "Because I'm your father. Because I gave you $40,000 to make your dream wedding happen. Because I've been patient for 2 months, while you've avoided every conversation about details." "Daddy, please don't make this harder than it has to be." Something in her tone, resignation mixed with guilt, made my chest tighten. "Make what harder?" Beverly turned slowly to face me, and I saw tears gathering in her eyes. Not the practiced tears from 2 months ago, but something real and devastating. The wedding was 4 days ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, my hand finding the doorframe for support, while my brain struggled to process what she'd said. "That's not funny." "It wasn't supposed to be funny." Her voice got smaller with each word. "It was just immediate family. Very small ceremony at Doug's parents' church. We decided we wanted something intimate." Immediate family. The phrase echoed in my mind while I stared at this stranger wearing my daughter's face. Immediate family that apparently didn't include the man who'd raised her, loved her, sacrificed his entire life, savings for her happiness. You want to see the video? Beverly held out her phone with trembling fingers. We hired a photographer. It was really beautiful. I looked at the screen, showing a frozen image of my daughter in white silk, standing beside Doug in what looked like a small church sanctuary. Her smile was radiant, genuine, the kind of happiness I'd dreamed of seeing when I walked her down an aisle I'd never see. No. The word came out colder than I'd intended, but I couldn't summon warmth for this moment. My daughter had stolen my money and my dreams, then had the audacity to offer me a recording of what I'd missed. Daddy, please understand. We didn't want a big production. All that stress. All those people to please. This was perfect for us. Perfect. I tested the word, found it bitter. And where exactly did my $40,000 go, if not toward this perfect intimate wedding? Beverly's face crumpled. We needed it for other things. The apartment deposit, Doug's car payment, some credit card debt. The wedding only cost $3,000. $3,000? I'd given her enough money to buy a car, and she'd spent it paying off mistakes, while lying to me about dream venues and crystal chandeliers. You played me. The realization felt like drowning in shallow water. Everything was a lie. The venue, the stress, the desperate phone call. You needed money and knew exactly which buttons to push. It wasn't personal. Those 3 words, it wasn't personal, cut deeper than any intended cruelty could have. My daughter had manipulated me with surgical precision, using my love for her as a weapon against my common sense, and she couldn't even admit it was deliberate. I looked at Beverly one last time, memorizing the face of someone I thought I knew. She held out her phone again, still offering to show me the wedding video, still hoping to smooth over the devastation with shared happiness I hadn't been allowed to witness. I shook my head once and turned toward the door. Daddy, please, don't leave like this. But I was already walking away, stepping back into Texas heat that felt cool compared to the burning in my chest. The metal stairs clanged under my boots as I descended from Beverly's apartment, her voice still calling through the closed door behind me. Daddy, please, don't leave like this. But I was already pushing through the building's glass entrance into heat that felt merciful compared to the burning in my chest. My truck sat baking in the parking lot, chrome door handle too hot to touch without wincing. I fumbled with my keys for a full minute before managing to unlock the door and slide onto seats that scorched through my shirt. The engine turned over reluctantly, air conditioning blowing superheated air that gradually cooled as I sat motionless, staring through the windshield at nothing. 4 days ago. My daughter had been married 4 days ago, and I'd spent those days worried about calling to check on wedding preparations that had already happened without me. The drive home passed in fragments. First 10 miles in complete silence, my mind blank except for the road ahead and the rhythmic hum of tires on sun-softened asphalt. Country music started playing when I hit the highway, something about family bonds and keeping promises, but I snapped it off immediately. The quiet felt safer than lyrics that reminded me how thoroughly I'd been played. Somewhere around mile 20, I started talking to myself. 4 days ago. The words came out harsh in the truck's silence. She stood in my living room 4 days ago and let me worry about a wedding that was already over. Traffic slowed near a construction zone, forcing me to sit still with my thoughts. That's when the real anger started building. Not the hot, explosive kind, but something colder and more dangerous. I remembered Beverly's performance in my living room back in May, how she'd clutched those wedding magazines like props in a carefully rehearsed play. Every hug had been calculated. Every tear had been strategic. Every "I love you, Daddy" had come with a hidden price tag. The billboard advertising, "Dream wedding venues make your day perfect," felt like cosmic mockery as I passed it going 75 in a 65 zone. My day. Beverly had stolen my day, the moment I'd imagined since she was 8 years old and making me play groom for her dolls in the backyard. The memory tasted bitter now, infected by the knowledge that she'd been learning manipulation tactics even then. Mile marker 67 brought me close enough to Willow Creek to smell familiar things, cattle ranches, oil refineries, the distinctive scent of home that used to comfort me. Today it just reminded me of everything I'd been willing to sacrifice for a daughter who saw me as a convenient ATM rather than a father worth including in her life. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel too tightly, knuckles white against the black plastic. Through the truck's windows, heat mirages made the road ahead appear liquid, wavy, unreal, which seemed appropriate since nothing in my life felt solid anymore. The Willow Creek city limit sign appeared around a gentle curve, weathered green metal that marked the boundary of my world. Beverly had escaped this place years ago, moving to Dallas with promises to visit often and call regularly. For a while, she'd kept those promises. Then the visits became requests for money, and the calls became manipulation sessions disguised as family conversations. I pulled into my driveway and sat for another moment, engine ticking as it cooled. Through the windshield, my mailbox bulged with accumulated mail I'd been ignoring, while worried about Beverly's fictional wedding crisis. Bills, advertisements, probably more brochures from wedding venues I'd contacted, when I still believed I was helping plan the most important day of my daughter's life. The sight of that overflowing mailbox made me straighten my shoulders. Time to stop ignoring reality and start dealing with it. The mailbox key felt unfamiliar in my fingers, as if I hadn't checked mail in months rather than days. Paper spilled out in a cascade of white and colored envelopes, advertisements for things I didn't need, and official notices that demanded immediate attention. I gathered the pile against my chest and headed inside, grateful for air conditioning that actually worked. My kitchen table became a sorting station, bills in one stack, junk mail in another, official correspondence requiring careful attention in a third. Most of it was routine: electric company, insurance premiums, Medicare updates, but one envelope made my blood run cold. First National Bank, Beverly's mortgage company. Urgent, payment, past due, screamed from the red stamp across the front, dated July 16th. Yesterday. I tore it open with clumsy fingers, already knowing what I'd find but hoping I was wrong. Account member 478291. Payment amount $150. Due date July 15th. Days overdue 4. The same date Beverly got married. The same amount I'd been sending every month for... How long had this been going on? My home office occupied what used to be Sarah's sewing room, converted after her death into a space for managing finances and storing important documents. I pulled out the file folder, labeled Beverly House Help, and spread its contents across my desk like evidence in a criminal investigation. 12 months of canceled checks. Everyone for exactly $150. Everyone dated the 15th of the month. Everyone made out to First National Bank for account number 478291. 12 months times 150 equals $22,200, plus the $40,000 wedding money. My daughter had cost me $62,200 in 1 year. The memory came back slowly, like a half-forgotten dream. August of last year, Beverly arriving at my house with photographs of a starter home she and Doug had found. Young couple, promising careers, just needed help getting established. 6 months of mortgage assistance while they built up savings and got their feet under them. You'd practically be investing in my future, Daddy. When the house appreciates, you'll have helped build our equity. 6 months had become 12 months. 12 months had become indefinite. And not once had Beverly mentioned stopping the payments or thanked me for the ongoing support. I spread the canceled checks across the desk chronologically, watching the progression of dates like a calendar of exploitation. August, September, October, through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, through spring and into summer. Every month, Beverly had accepted my money as if it was her natural due, never acknowledging the sacrifice it represented. While I'd been eating store-brand groceries and wearing the same shirts I'd owned for 5 years, my daughter had been living in a house I was paying for, planning a wedding with money she'd manipulated from me, and treating my love like a renewable resource she could tap whenever convenient. The afternoon sun slanted through the office windows, casting long shadows across the evidence of my foolishness. Outside, Harry's lawnmower started up, a familiar Saturday sound that normally brought comfort. Today it just reminded me how normal life continued while I'd been living in a fantasy of being a helpful father. Beverly's thank you card from the first mortgage payment sat at the bottom of the file. Forgotten and now cruelly ironic. You're the best daddy in the world. I'll never forget this kindness. Apparently, she'd forgotten it within a month, when the second payment became an expectation rather than a gift. I picked up the bank notice with its bold red past due stamp and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Beverly thought I'd just keep paying forever, automatically, like some kind of parental trust fund that never required maintenance or gratitude. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Sunday morning arrived with the clarity that sometimes follows emotional devastation. I woke before dawn, mind sharp despite having slept poorly, and knew exactly what needed to be done. The documents from yesterday's discovery lay organized on my kitchen table like a battle plan waiting for execution. Strong coffee, legal pad for notes, bank contact information, the tools of liberation. At 8 o'clock sharp, I dialed First National Bank's customer service line and waited through automated prompts until a human voice answered. "This is Margaret in Mortgage Services. How can I help you today?" "My name is Jesse Collins. I've been making payments on account 4478291 for my daughter, but I'm discontinuing that arrangement immediately." A pause, keyboard clicking in the background. "Mr. Collins, let me pull up that account. Yes, I see you're listed as an authorized payer. Are you requesting removal from the account?" "Exactly. I want all automatic transfers stopped, and I want my name removed as a responsible party. This arrangement is over." "I understand. We'll need that request in writing, but I can process the removal today if you fax a signed letter. The account holders will be notified that they're now solely responsible for payments." Account holders. Plural. Beverly and Doug living in their house, sleeping in their bed, building their life with my money while treating me like an inconvenient but reliable ATM. Perfect. What's your fax number? The letter took me 20 minutes to write and rewrite until the language was clear and final. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing all financial support for mortgage account 4478291. I will make no further payments of any kind. Please remove my name as authorized payer and direct all future communication to the account holders. I signed it with the same pen I'd used to sign Beverly's checks for 12 months. Walking to the copy center in town gave me time to think through implications. Beverly would receive notice within days. Her mortgage payment would be entirely her responsibility. Doug would have to step up or they'd face foreclosure proceedings. Real consequences for real adults who'd been playing house with someone else's money. Back home, I updated my budget for the first time in a year. Without Beverly's mortgage drain, I had an extra $150 monthly. Nearly $2,000 that would stay in my account, earning interest, available for my needs instead of subsidizing her lifestyle. The relief was physical. Tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying drained from my shoulders, my neck, my chest. For 12 months, I'd been checking my account balance with anxiety, wondering what Beverly would need next. Those days were over. My phone started ringing around 10:30. Beverly's number on the caller ID, probably panicking about the bank notice she'd received. I looked at the phone, let it ring, and walked to my workshop instead. For the first time in months, I had a morning that belonged entirely to me. The workbench held a project I'd abandoned when Beverly's financial emergencies started consuming my time and mental energy. A jewelry box I'd planned to make for Sarah's anniversary before she passed. Cherry wood, dovetail joints, brass hinges I'd ordered but never installed. I picked up my smoothing plane and felt its familiar weight. This was my time now. My money, my energy, my choice how to spend both. Beverly could call until her phone battery died. I had better things to do than manage crises I hadn't created. Outside my workshop window, the Texas sun climbed toward another scorching day, but I felt cooler and more peaceful than I had in over a year. The wood shavings curled away from my plane in perfect ribbons, and somewhere in the distance, my phone stopped ringing. 1 month of freedom had transformed my kitchen from a neglected space into something worth admiring. August 20th found me halfway through painting the last cabinet, country music playing from my old radio, hands steady with the satisfaction of work done for myself alone. The white paint covered years of grease stains and Beverly's fingerprints, erasing traces of dependency I hadn't realized were everywhere. The phone's harsh ring cut through Garth Brooks, singing about friends in low places, I wiped my hands on a paint-stained rag and considered letting it go to voicemail. These days, most calls were either telemarketers or people I actually wanted to talk to. Beverly hadn't tried to reach me since that disastrous morning when her world collapsed around her designer heels. On the fourth ring, curiosity won. "Hello?" "Daddy, thank goodness you answered. I've been trying to reach you for days." Beverly's voice hit my ear like fingernails on chalkboard. The panic was real this time. None of the calculated tears she'd used before. Raw desperation made her words tumble over each other in a rush to explain whatever crisis had finally caught up with her. "I've been busy," I said, voice level as lake water on a windless day. "What do you need?" "The bank called this morning. They said the mortgage payment is a month overdue. When are you going to pay it?" I set my paintbrush down carefully, taking my time. Through the kitchen window I could see Harry trimming his hedge, moving with the methodical precision of a man who understood the value of maintaining what belonged to him. "Is that so?" "Daddy, they're talking about foreclosure proceedings. We could lose everything." "Everything." The word tasted bitter in her mouth. I could hear it. Everything she'd built on my money. Everything she'd assumed would continue flowing from my account, like water, from a faucet she never bothered to maintain. "When are you going to pay it?" she repeated, voice climbing toward the hysterical range that used to trigger my protective instincts. Now it just sounded like noise. "I'm not." The silence stretched long enough for me to pick up my brush and add another careful stroke to the cabinet door. Quality work required patience, attention to detail, commitment to seeing things through properly. "What do you mean you're not?" "I mean exactly that. I'm not paying it today. I'm not paying it tomorrow. I'm not paying it ever again." "But Daddy, you always help me. You promised you'd always be there." The manipulation was so naked now, so obvious, that I wondered how I'd ever fallen for it. Beverly's toolkit hadn't changed. The same emotional blackmail, the same appeals to promises I'd never made, the same assumption that love meant unlimited financial liability. "I helped the daughter I thought I had," I said. "That person doesn't exist." Her sobbing started then, the full theatrical production that used to melt my resolve like ice cream in Texas heat. Now it sounded like performance art, studied and hollow. "Please, we'll lose everything, the house, our credit, our future." "Then I guess your family will have to handle it." "Family? We are family." Family doesn't lie about weddings, Beverly. Family doesn't use love as currency. Family doesn't exclude the people who sacrifice for them. "But what are we supposed to do? Doug's still looking for work, and I can barely cover groceries." "What you should have done from the beginning. Figure it out yourselves." I could hear her hyperventilating, the kind of panic that comes when someone realizes their safety net has been cut away permanently. For just a moment, I felt something that might have been sympathy. Then I remembered the wedding video she'd offered to show me, the casual cruelty of that gesture, and my resolve hardened into something unbreakable. "Daddy, please, I don't understand how you can abandon me like this." "Abandon you?" The irony was so thick it could have been painted on these cabinet doors. "You abandoned me first, at an altar I never got to see, surrounded by family that apparently didn't include the man who raised you." The line went quiet, except for her breathing, harsh and desperate. Outside, a lawnmower started up somewhere down the street. Normal people doing normal things on a Tuesday afternoon in August, maintaining their own lives without anyone else's permission or financial support. "We're family," she whispered one last time, all fight gone out of her voice. "No," I said. "We're strangers who happen to share DNA." I hung up while she was still crying and stood in my kitchen for a moment, listening to the echo of my own words. The radio was still playing, some song about standing your ground when the world tries to push you around. I picked up my paintbrush and hummed along, applying another perfect coat to the cabinet that would never again bear the fingerprints of manipulation. The kitchen cabinet gleamed with fresh paint by 4 o'clock, a small masterpiece of careful craftsmanship that belonged entirely to me. No one had demanded it, scheduled it, or made it conditional on their approval. I'd simply decided my kitchen deserved better, and now it had what it deserved. Cleaning my brushes became a meditation on completeness. The white paint swirled away under hot water, leaving bristles clean and ready for the next project. The bedroom, maybe, or the guest bathroom that hadn't seen guests in 2 years. Projects I could afford now that my money stayed in my account where it belonged. The radio DJ's voice cut through my satisfaction. 4:15 on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, temperature holding steady at 92 degrees. 4:15. Beverly's panic call felt like ancient history already. Someone else's drama that had nothing to do with the peaceful man washing paintbrushes in his own sink. My bank statement lay on the counter where I'd left it that morning, open to reveal numbers that still surprised me. Balance, $4,647. 2 months ago, that number would have been $2,397 after Beverly's mortgage payment disappeared into her account. The difference represented more than money. It represented choice, freedom, the revolutionary concept of keeping what I'd earned. I made myself a sandwich with actual deli turkey instead of the store brand I'd been buying to accommodate Beverly's financial drain. The taste of real food, purchased without guilt or calculation, reminded me what normal people took for granted. My pension covered my needs. It had always covered my needs. Beverly's needs had been the expensive part. The afternoon stretched ahead like an invitation to possibilities I'd forgotten existed. I could read a book without checking my phone every 10 minutes. I could start another home improvement project without worrying about having money for materials. I could even plan that fishing trip to Lake Texoma I'd been postponing for over a year. My notebook, the one where I used to track Beverly's payment schedules, now held different lists. New refrigerator, $800. Deck repairs, $400. Weekend trip to Houston to visit old work friends, $300. Numbers that added up to a life lived for the person earning the money instead of the person spending it. The appliance store answered on the second ring. Thompson's Appliances, this is Maria. This is Jesse Collins. I'd like to schedule delivery of a refrigerator for this Friday. Certainly, Mr. Collins. What model were you interested in? I looked at my old refrigerator, limping along on borrowed time with a freezer that had to be defrosted manually every month. The best one you have that costs under $1,000. The best one, not the cheapest, not the one that would leave more money for Beverly's emergencies. The best one because I deserved appliances that worked properly and I could finally afford them. By 5:30 I had delivery scheduled, a fishing trip planned for the weekend, and a contractor's estimate requested for deck repairs. My calendar, once held hostage by Beverly's crises, now belonged to me. The freedom was almost disorienting after months of reactive living. Grilling a steak on the back porch while the sun painted the sky, orange felt like luxury beyond description. Real beef, thick cut and properly marbled, seasoned with spices I'd bought without checking the price. The sizzle of meat on hot metal sounded like prosperity, like a man taking care of himself the way he deserved. Harry appeared at the fence between our yards, beer in hand, an expression curious. "You're looking mighty content over there, Jesse." "Good day for it," I replied, flipping the steak with practiced ease. "Beautiful evening, good food, no complaints." "Haven't seen Beverly's car lately. Wedding preparations keeping her busy?" I'd never told Harry the truth about Beverly's marriage, partly from embarrassment and partly because it hadn't seemed important. Now it felt like ancient history, someone else's story that had no bearing on my current reality. Beverly's handling her own affairs these days. I'm focusing on mine. Harry nodded approvingly. Probably healthy. Can't live your kids' lives for them forever. Forever. The word settled over me like the evening breeze, carrying the scent of cooling air and grilling meat. Forever was how long I'd been prepared to subsidize Beverly's lifestyle. Forever was how long she'd planned to let me. Thank goodness forever had ended when it did. My steak was perfect, pink in the middle, charred on the edges, exactly the way I liked it without anyone else's preferences to consider. I ate slowly, savoring each bite and the complete absence of phone anxiety that had plagued me for months. No missed calls, no emergency texts, no manufactured crises demanding immediate financial intervention. As twilight deepened into evening, I heard a car door slam somewhere down the street. For just a moment, muscle memory made me wonder if Beverly was coming to continue our conversation in person. Then I realized something profound. I didn't care. Let her come. This was my house, my porch, my life, my decision. Whatever happened next, I'd handle it from a position of strength rather than manipulation, clarity rather than confusion, self-respect rather than guilt. The difference felt like waking up from a long, expensive dream. The car door I'd heard belonged to Beverly after all. At 6:30, she appeared around the corner of my house, with Doug trailing behind like an uncomfortable shadow. They approached my back porch where I sat finishing my coffee, moving with the hesitant steps of people who weren't sure of their welcome. I didn't stand up, didn't invite them to sit, just watched them cross my yard with the detached interest of a man observing strangers navigate his property. "I figured you'd show up eventually," I said. Beverly looked terrible, red-eyed, desperate, wearing the same clothes she'd probably slept in. Doug kept his distance, clearly uncomfortable with whatever plan had brought them here. The golden hour light made harsh shadows across their faces, emphasizing the strain of people facing consequences they'd never expected. "Daddy, we need to talk. This is serious." "Everything's always serious with you, Beverly. That's how I know it usually isn't." She stepped closer to the porch, hands clasped in front of her like she was praying to a deity she'd never believed in before this moment. "We'll lose the house. Everything we worked for." "Everything I worked for, you mean?" Doug finally found his voice. "Mr. Collins, we really appreciate everything you've done for us, and we understand—" "Do you?" I cut him off, studying this man who'd married my daughter in secret while living in a house I'd been paying for. "Because that wedding said otherwise. That celebration you had without me suggested a complete lack of appreciation." Beverly dropped to her knees in the grass, a gesture so theatrical it would have been laughable if it weren't so pathetic. "Please, Daddy, I'm begging you. We can't survive without your help." Doug looked mortified, but knelt beside her anyway, following her lead into this performance of desperation. From my elevated position on the porch, I looked down at them literally and figuratively. Two adults reduced to begging for money from a man they deliberately excluded from their lives. "You created a family without me," I said. "Now survive as that family." "But you're my father." Beverly's voice cracked with the kind of pain that used to move mountains in my heart. Now it just sounded like delayed recognition of consequences. "You're supposed to help me. Fathers help daughters. I don't know what you are anymore, but you're not that." Doug tried a different approach, his business background showing through the awkwardness. "Sir, maybe we could work out some kind of payment plan? Something manageable for everyone?" "The plan is you handle your own responsibilities, like adults, like the married couple you chose to become without consulting anyone else." Beverly played her final card with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. "What would Mom think of you abandoning me like this?" The mention of Sarah, my Sarah, who'd loved Beverly unconditionally and trusted me to do the same, hit exactly the wrong nerve at exactly the wrong moment. I stood up for the first time since they'd arrived, feeling steel replace whatever softness might have remained in my voice. "Your mother would be ashamed of what you became. She'd be disgusted by how you used love as a weapon and family as a bank account." Beverly fell silent, finally understanding that she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The golden light was fading now, leaving them in shadows that seemed appropriate for people who'd chosen to live in the dark corners of manipulation and deceit. $22,000 for your mortgage, $40,000 for your fake wedding emergency, $62,000 you took from a man who loved you enough to give you everything. My voice carried across the yard like a judgment that had been years in the making. "And not once did you think to include me in the life I was financing?" The evening cicadas started their chorus, filling the silence that stretched between us like a chasm that could never be bridged. Beverly remained on her knees, crying real tears for perhaps the first time in years. Doug stared at the ground, probably calculating how many months of his salary I'd unknowingly contributed to their lifestyle. "Get off my property," I said. "Both of you." They rose without protest. Two people who'd finally run out of arguments, manipulations, and appeals to emotions they'd never understood. Beverly looked back once as they reached the corner of the house, but I'd already settled back into my chair, master of my domain once again. Their car started up in the driveway, headlights sweeping across my yard as they backed out and drove away. The sound of their engine faded into the Texas evening, leaving behind the piece I'd been missing for over a year. Tomorrow I'd start painting the bedroom, another project for myself, by myself. Tonight, I'd just enjoy the silence of a man who'd finally learned the difference between being a father and being a fool. The cicadas sang their approval, and somewhere in the distance, life continued at its own pace, free from the manufactured emergencies of people who'd confused love with money and family with exploitation. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.